welcome to Litera TV. I'm Caroline Hill. I'm Editor-in-Chief of Legal IT Insider, and I'm joined by Peter Campbell, who is Client Solutions Director at Hall & Wilcox. Hi, Peter.
Hey, Caroline. How are you?
Yeah, really good, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me, all the way from Australia.
It's great. It's always good to have a chat.
So we're here today. We've actually got quite a mixed bag to talk through, but I think one of the sort of primary areas that we're going to be talking through is case management. You recently put in ShareDo from Sliced Bread, and I think a good chunk of our conversation will be taken up talking about the rollout, your experiences, and how it's being pushed out further, which I think will be of so much interest to the market, given that is obviously such a focus for everyone right now in terms of creating a work engine. But just to introduce you properly, so you joined as Client Solutions Director in 2016.
That's right, yep.
Yeah. You lead the firm's Smarter Law strategy, which includes the development of client-facing tech. That's correct?
That's right, yeah. Absolutely.
Is that correct?
I think it's correct.
Just making sure I haven't screwed it up, really. And then you were previously Chief Information Officer and Knowledge Director at Spark Helmore.
That's right, yeah. Yep.
And then Hall & Wilcox, so 750 people, around 90 partners, and this is relevant in terms of the type of work. So you do a lot of insurance defendant work, but not necessarily volume. Is that fair?
Well, no, we do probably a third of the firm's work is volume insurance defendant work. Then there's some more insurance work, and then 50% is sort of full service, M&A, employment, private clients, all the other stuff. So it's really half an insurance firm in a way. Okay.
And then we're going to talk a bit about some of the interesting initiatives that you've brought in after we've talked about case management. We'll be talking about some of the Smarter Law initiatives that you've been bringing in, which are really interesting, and perhaps a little bit about the ROI. We've got a whole ton of stuff that we're going to be talking about. And if we've got time, which we may not have, we're going to talk about the recent incubator, women-focused incubator. We might have time, but if not, then we could talk about that another time. So tell me about, it was March, wasn't it, that you went live on ShareDo?
That's right, yeah, March 2020. That was our first group live. And it's funny, we went live about 3 or 4 days before lockdown.
Yes.
And so that worried us a little bit at the time. But I don't think it was a problem because, that's one of the reasons behind a case management system, is to try and get work around and collaborate better and all that sort of stuff. It was a bit early to be testing it, but it came through, so that was good. And so we went live in Queensland with our workers' compensation group, so it's quite process focused. It's quite a large team, so it's been going really well ever since. Since then, we've put in another 3 business units, 3 relatively small projects, because we wanted to tease out different ways of implementing it. And now we've got another 2 large projects coming up in the next 6 months. So it just seems to be ShareDo at the moment. Pretty busy.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, it is interesting that you went live at the height of lockdown. I remember writing about it at the time, and you did a great job of instantly going remote, right? Which was, I guess, ultimately has helped during lockdown in terms of creating better visibility of what everyone's doing, which I guess would have been trickier before.
Yeah, that's right. One of the reasons for putting ShareDo in, it's not like we don't have systems, but each group's kind of evolved its system over time. And so ShareDo for us represented more of an enterprise approach, a chance to bring everybody under the same system so we could get more efficiencies, because there's a lot of bits of process that are similar from one group to the next. So that's been pretty good. And yeah, so we've had quite a bit of success with ShareDo, and I've implemented case management systems quite a bit over the years. Some projects have been good, some haven't been so good, and I think I'd characterize every case management system as hard because it's a combination of a complex system you've got to set up right, and then you've often got to change the culture of people to get them to use it. Lawyers don't naturally take to process, and so that was a big. That's certainly been a big challenge, and will remain a big challenge for us. But we clocked over in our little dashboard. Here I can see we've done 39,000 documents have been automated so far through ShareDo in the past 12 months.
Yeah, that's
and that's really exciting.
Let's talk about the because I think it was really interesting the process you went through. So 20 and then I'm really interested to dive a bit more into how you've extended it. But so just to track back a tiny bit. So you selected it in 2018, and
Yep.
I think it's relevant to say that you went through a really intensive process of mapping, didn't you? So you spent a lot of time mapping out the workflows across the firm, conducting workshops to help the analysts work out how lawyers work, what their processes are, and then further workshops to talk about the paths that the lawyers should follow. So it's been it's safe to say, isn't it, that it definitely wasn't an overnight thing, but do you feel like that has been key? Was that one of the keys to it being successful, do you think, that you've really nailed down the processes, how people work, and then you're able to automate them?
Yeah, because I think it's all about getting it out of the lawyers' heads and into our heads. That's the first point of doing it. And then the second thing is when you can see it on paper, because the lawyers don't always think about how they run a matter. They just or how they run a portfolio. They think matter by matter. I've got this matter in front of me. This is what I'm going to do. But the reality is our clients give us thousands of matters.
Yeah.
And the clients expect us to manage it like a portfolio. And so you kind of have to elevate the lawyers a little bit above the work they're working on and look at it in a different perspective. And so that's been really good.
Yeah. So
there we were able to see the obvious stuff, like why are we doing this task 12 times during the matter? Maybe the client's asked for us to do some sort of review, but occasionally we've tapped the client on the shoulder and said, do you really think you need us to do that? Because maybe we could do it once a quarter instead of once a month, because we're just billing time. We're giving you that. Not much is changing. How about we tell you when something's changed that you need to know about rather than looking at it anyway? So those are the sorts of things that come out. And I think the other thing it enabled us to do, because we mapped how it was versus how it's going to be, it gave us an ability to see, well, what's changing? And then that gave us some clues as to what people might like or maybe not like down the track. So there's no replacement for getting that stuff on paper or electronically or whatever, but it's not necessarily fun, but if you don't do it, it's like you don't have a solid foundation.
Yes. In terms of because we're going to talk about the importance of case management, particularly now, but just to get a bit of understanding, in terms of the teams that are now using ShareDo, are they different to perhaps, we have an understanding, obviously case management within the insurance sector has been used for a long time, it's not anything new. And actually what always amazes me is the amount of actually how far ahead the insurance sector is. There's a lot of stuff within the transactional market where people feel like they're cutting edge, and actually it's being done, call it what you will, call it RPA, call it whatever, but actually there's a lot of automation. What is the difference in terms of, say, the teams that are now using ShareDo? Is it that perhaps they're more senior, or that they're, perhaps different type of work to the work that we would normally expect to be sort of involved in a case management system?
Oh, I think it's similar. And I think there's a difference between Australia and the UK in terms of insurance, because I think the UK is ahead of Australia generally, because you've got larger volumes, and there's been a big insurer consolidation going on in the UK, which means that a lot of firms either dropped off a panel or got lots of work. And in Australia, that's been a bit slower. So I'd say it's similar to the sort of work you'd be doing in the UK in volume insurance. So it's pretty similar there. It's different procedures, but the basic concepts are the same. It's a little bit harder in Australia in some sense to get it all set up because every jurisdiction has a different set of rules.
Yes.
And that certainly caused Share a lot of pain, and us, because everything that you configure, you have to configure 7 different ways for 7 different states or whatever it is. And so that's a layer of complexity that you don't have in the UK. So that caused a few sleepless nights.
I remember that became obvious as part of your mapping process, didn't it? That suddenly realised you're like, oh God. Fine, okay. So so the past 12 months. Let's talk about just a bit more detail, in terms of how you've rolled it out. And I don't know if you're able to talk about the other teams that are using it and whether that's sort of as expected or just do a bit of a deeper dive into that.
Yeah, everything's been a bit different. So the first team was the Queensland One Workers' Comp, and they have adopted it the best, to be honest. It's because they've got a very sophisticated client. So the client's right on top of things. They love their analytics, and they've trained the lawyers to run a portfolio of matters rather than individual matters. So over many years, the lawyers have learned to do that. So Share was just an extension of that. And so there was no real cultural change required for those guys. We've since put it into our motor vehicle, crash and bash and recovery teams, workers' comp recovery, and now it's just gone into our general insurance, product liability, professional indemnity. So they're less volume, but there's still a procedural element. And all of them have been a bit different. In case of motor, they hadn't really used a system much before, so we had to go through a bigger change management exercise to get the lawyers to realise that feeding the system a little bit was part of their job now. It wasn't just being a lawyer. They have to engage with the system. They can't just do it the way they want. They can't just run their task list in Outlook or whatever they want to do, or Trello or something like that. They have to all use the same thing.
Right.
And so that was a bit tricky, and that's taken up slower, but we've had to do coaching. So we didn't have to train them to use the system, but we had to coach them on how to adopt the way that the whole team decided to work. And so that has entailed little sessions with them, helping them get through their tasks, showing them shortcuts, that sort of thing. And then other groups like the Section 138, the recoveries group, they've just kind of picked it up and run with it, but then they've used it in a different way than we thought. So we've had to adjust it a bit to, the processes are different from what they said they were going to be. So every single implementation is quite different, and they all require more effort than you think should be reasonable to keep people engaged.
And I guess that's all the change management piece, isn't it? So I guess that's about having enough resource and support to anticipate whatever their needs might be, and just make sure that you're there as they're starting to do things, to make sure you're directing them, because old habits die hard, don't they? Often it's the cultural change management piece that's harder than the tech.
Well, that's right, but we've kind of got around it often by for the groups who've had competitions, we've given them dashboards of how their tasks are going, so that we can see who's got what on, and we've got their task aging into colour bands and all that sort of stuff. And so it does create a bit more of a competitive instinct. And we even had 2 groups went live at once, and so we had the 2 partners battling it out to see who could get their team further up on the usage leaderboard. So I think that sort of feedback to them as to how things are going so that they can see they're heading in the right direction, I think that's really important. So, it's not been overly hard. It's not been surprising, but I guess it's harder than you think it should be. Yeah.
I've never spoken to any. I helped to host a meeting on the request of a CIO in the UK where he wanted to talk about case management and get a bunch of people together, and everyone was just like, oh, because it's really difficult. And often, like, you guys had quite a few legacy different systems. I know one of them, I think, was Case Notes, wasn't it? That was the main one. Actually, had a few, and it's very difficult, isn't it, trying to get rid of legacy systems, actually bring in one case management system, which actually then from that you then start to really get the benefit of all the analytics, I guess, once you have made that slightly painful journey.
Yeah, and people talk about analytics a lot. There's a lot of stuff in the press about what people are doing and all that sort of stuff. I'm still a fan of good data quality. I think that's pretty important. And so systems like this are important just to get things right. But again, it's not rocket science, because now that we've got the data in there, the lawyers are starting to see a benefit. So they did some analysis for a client recently that said the country jurisdictions of a certain state were getting worse decisions for us than the city ones, and that's what the stats told them. And then they were able to dig in as to, well, what was the reasons behind that, and there was a number of reasons and things that I probably can't talk about, but I guess just getting that data then suddenly turns this light bulb on, and someone goes, oh, now I know I'm going through this pain because there's something coming out the other end that's going to help. A lot of our clients are really interested in that, and in fact, I think clients have evolved to the point where when we reviewed the benefits of case management, we did it recently for a board report, which is sort of like a checklist of how we were going. And we came up with financial benefits based on mainly document automation and streamlining who does what. But when we got them in a room for a workshop, they sort of said, well, we've got 16 clients that all have different service standards for running the same sorts of matters. They've all got different standards of advices that they want, different templates. How can we possibly manage that without a system? So it was kind of like, it was more like, don't take it away from us because there's no alternative. And then it gets into the streamlining. And a lot of the working mums that got stuck at home with COVID, they found it good because it enabled them to work outside of hours more easily and collaborate asynchronously with other people in the team. And so they were able to get stuff done. And so they even commented in their performance reviews that this concept had given them more flexibility than they had before. So I really like things like, we didn't sort of set out to do that, but I think it was really nice.
That's really cool. Joe, I suppose in a minute we should move on, but I find this area, because I think this speaks to such a problem that everyone's having, which is why I think it's so helpful. I think people are looking for different options and solutions, obviously. But one thing with so case management, I think we're going to publish something from you. And one of the things I liked in some of your notes, you said, in terms of why case management is important, you talk about forgetting the post-it notes and service design and design thinking. And they're saying that there's too much emphasis on that. And actually what you need is to start building a delivery engine, mapping processes and coding up systems, which is more boring than ideation sessions, but in more your opinion, more impactful, the most impactful thing that you can do, bring back boring.
Yeah, like it's funny, I love a post-it note session more than anybody, I suppose, but why a partner wanted to run an ideation session with one of our large insurers, and the the client or the sort of panel representative came back to us and we were having a coffee and they said, what do I want to do that for? I've already given you 15 pages of service standards. I've told you how you are to interact with us. I've told you how I want you to run the matters. And I want you to tick all of those boxes first. Then you can come back to me with the icing on the cake and maybe make us feel better about how we're running the matters. But at the moment, I really want all my panel firms to focus on delivery. Do what we've told you to do. Come back to us with ideas of how we should change it. Absolutely. Yeah. But build that engine to make it easier. And that's why we think we need an enterprise approach, because we have clients that have work across multiple teams and jurisdictions, and they all need to be dealt with consistently, but also tailored to a particular work stream. So it's just a mishmash it's a big matrix you need to set up.
I think to an extent, though, the exercise, the mapping exercise you did fits in with the legal design thinking, doesn't it? You know, that I think that. Yeah, that's something that, you know, it's sort of a no-brainer, but a lot of people still don't do it, right? Like they expect to go from one. Anyway, another topic for another time, but I love the sort of whole design thinking concept of really unpicking. And I guess that's where you talk about the replication, right? Like, because that's where you start to go, why do we do it? And why did 7 people touch it instead of 2? And
one of our analysts said that they looked at something and they said there's 850 process actions in this work stream. They said, but 280 of them we can take from another work stream. So we really only need to build whatever the difference is. And to me, that's pretty magic. And it also shares best practice, because as you take that on and you put it into a team, that they'll tweak it if it needs adjusting, and then everybody benefits from that. And so you're sharing knowledge amongst the teams in ways that was not possible when they're just sitting in their silos running their work streams by themselves.
100%. So where do you, just before, again, I keep saying we're going to move on, but lastly, I suppose, where do clients want this to go? You've talked about the clients. Where do they see this? How far do you think it will go?
Well, I think what clients want from us is that absolute predictability. And I think every law firm on every panel could look at itself carefully and go, am I doing as good a job as I could on that? And then the second thing that clients want, we were talking to a big client last week, and they said, well, we've just launched the new suite of reports and dashboards and what we think your performance should be. We want you to tell us what we're not seeing. We want you to tell us the insights that you're having. And it's not like we don't have insights now, and it's not like a lawyer without a system wouldn't have insights, but a lot of them are anecdotal and they're based on 25 years of experience or something. So what systems in general will give us is the ability to speed up that process and give more insights in real time. And they also want to know what's going a bit pear-shaped, because certainly in insurance, you've got your claims teams and you've usually got your corporate team that's overlooking it, or the procurement team. You need to kind of keep both happy. And so you need to feed really specific information to these guys and specific information to these. So the clients are a little bit boring in what they want. They just want this consistency, but they want us to give them insights faster, and they want us to only tell them about things that are interesting. And so that's really just refining down what we do. So I don't think it's magically different. And I'm sure you can throw AI over there and analyze things in more depth and come up with ideas, and by mashing data sets, all sorts of stuff. That's all possible too. But really, the whole reason for doing any of that is to tell them something they don't know. Yeah. And that's what we're trying to do.
I like it. So let's talk. It's going to have to be fairly briefly, unfortunately, but about Smarter Law. I'm a great manager of time, you can tell. So Smarter Law. So you were brought in, just to recap, Smarter Law is the client-facing, using tech to do things better. Is that a fair way of describing it? Can you describe, you've got kind of 4 focus areas. Can you share with us what those are?
Sure. So Smarter Law really was something the firm came up with before I started, and it was their concept of being at the top level, better, faster and cheaper, and looking more like a new law firm despite the fact they're not a new law firm. And so it really boils down to 4 focus areas. The first one is teaching lawyers how to be innovative in some way, and there's not really magic to that, but it's letting them experience the innovation process and putting some processes around it and giving them support so they can make mistakes and try things out. And so that's tools and support and ideas. And a big thing we've been trying to teach lately is this method of getting from an idea to reality, because someone will come up with an idea and think it's our job to make it real, when really the job is a collaborative one. So that's the first focus. The second one is engaging with clients differently. And so that's about giving them the insights that they want, or designing a service around how a client wants to use it, so that you're more in your service design sort of element of thinking there. The third one, which is where Sharedo probably sits more, is in process improvement, document automation, the sorts of tools and delivery engines you need. And then the fourth piece, it's a softer one, I suppose. It's engaging with the industry to progress the conversation. And we do that mostly by getting grads out of university and giving them legal ops grad rotations and things like that, and working with the universities to do guest lectures and run hackathons and just engage the young lawyers in something other than the priestly 11 or whatever they call it, the core legal studies, so that they can learn that law is more than just the law, if that makes sense.
It's great you do that, because I still think that's somewhere that the UK is actually lacking, to be honest with you. Fine. And so in terms of I think maybe let's just focus on, you've had a couple of really cool initiatives, haven't you? So there's been a few sort of decision trees you've leveraged. I can't speak, Peter. You've had the Verb and PPSA complex decision trees. You've had the work visa placement app. Then you've created matter management portals. I like this name. You've got UBot, which is for, you worked with insurers, IAG and Allianz, to help them assess whether the car claims actually were the right value. What would you say? I mean, highlight one of them. Maybe you could talk through. You've leveraged Checkbox to build apps. And to talk about, perhaps we've only got really a few minutes. Talk about what you think the most interesting to you is in terms of some of the output that you've created.
Well, the one I really enjoyed the most was the work visa system that we set up. And so we were getting work visas for companies, and we still do a lot of that. And we worked with a forward-thinking company, and they said, and so at its essence, that's quite a simple process. People fill in a 75-page form, and we make sure it gets across the line. That's it. But there's a lot of stakeholders to manage there, because you're trying to recruit somebody, you're trying to keep them interested, you're trying to know when they're going to start, if there are any risks, that sort of thing. So although it's quite simple, there's a lot of touch points in that process. So we had a matter management portal, and we really just built a way of them instructing us first with the right information, and then sending quite a detailed but easy to fill in form to the candidates so that they could fill it in, and then giving real-time feedback to the company so that they would know where the person is in the form, because you're wondering, how come George hasn't submitted it yet? Where is he? Oh, he's stuck on this section. So it's about just increasing that visibility. And then that all translates into a portal that gives them status updates of where things are and ways of escalating things and looking things up. And so the company turned around to us and they said, we thought you were just doing work visas, but now you really transformed the way the process is working. And now the candidates are happier and we're happier and we know what's going on. And so So that's to me, that's an example of where tech and service meets law. So that's really good. Sorry. Yep.
No, I was just going to say, because I think we're going to run out of time, sadly, and I just wanted to ask you really quickly, are you still struggling? This is a big question to ask you to answer in about 2 minutes, but are you, there was always culturally this issue with ROI, with these sorts of things, and perhaps you've had people, I know this has been a manual process, which nobody really likes doing anyway, but are these conversations in terms of monetizing these things and ROI getting easier? Is the dialogue changing?
I think it is, because the market is demanding more consumer-based experiences. And if you're going to stay relevant, you have to keep investing in these services. So 5 years ago, it might have been hard to get some money to do this, but it's not so hard now. In Sharedo's case, there's a terrific ROI, and in this case here, it wasn't something we charged the client for, but on the back of that, we've launched a service, we've made ourselves look a bit smarter, and we've got more. We've got a product in the market that's getting us more of that work than we ever had before. So, I guess what's changed is, having gone through the cycle a bit, they're seeing the benefits of it. And we've built this kind of tracker that shows the firm how many people have used our solutions, how much revenue's been billed through them. And I'll send you some pictures one day. Maybe we'll do a bit of an article on that. But it's really important to feed that back, because then the lawyers see, oh, right, okay, we got through we added another 6,000 matters to our Smarter Law solutions, and that was driven by the immigration thing or this or that. It just makes it more real.
Yeah, more tangible.
Yeah. And the other one last thing I'd say is that it's important to engineer it so that you can use one thing many times. So don't put in lots of solutions, because then the more we do now, the cheaper it gets.
Interesting, and that's very much the way that it's going, isn't it, in terms of the one platform, single sign-on, because otherwise everybody gets exhausted. I will post, alongside this video, when I share it, I will post information about the incubator that you're running to sort of attract more female founders, to make sure that anyone who's keen to engage or learn more then can still do that, even though we haven't had time to talk about it. But it's been really great chatting to you, and just going to say thank you very much for your time, Peter.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Caroline.